Warning. The story you are about to read and or listen to has a series of potentially triggering and controversial topics, as well as events taking place. I will list them now. Child abuse, substance abuse, implied sexual abuse, bullying, self-harm, suicidal thoughts and tendencies, and potentially more as the story progresses. If you may feel uncomfortable by these things, no one will judge you if you click off of this video. If you accept the risk and want to experience the story for what it is, then I invite you to enjoy this chapter of Whitemailing. Thank you. Final disclaimer. I do not make light of these topics, nor do I find them to be tools for shock value. I do consider them very real events that happen daily. Therefore, they should not be barred from being in a story to give it a more real feeling. I do not hope to make light of these things, only to draw attention to them. Please enjoy the show. Chapter 3. Although she cursed herself for running late on the 4th day of school, she thanked her lucky stars that she had plenty of experience in track. Her sprint speed and her cardio shape helped tremendously as she ran from home to school. She turned a 15-minute walk into a 3-minute run. June panted lightly, trying to pace her breath, even though her mind continued to abate her. She was never late. Never. The last time she was late to class was in her 3rd year. This was her 9th. June had more than enough time to make it to class. She just hated not being early. If she did the math right, she'd be in class mere minutes before opening bell. That was late to her. June was upset at being late, but every time she thought about why, she couldn't help but figure that it was worth it. The images of Kyler's home life still hadn't left her mind. It seemed to repeat over and over, almost as a permanent pounding reminder that she had to do this, or no one else would. The very thought that Kyler had literally no one else to rely on made her sad, but it also gave her a large burst of determination. She knew that she could do this. She could turn his life around. But how? While she knew she could do it, simply being his friend and shadowing him for a month, most likely more, would do very little in terms of his life. But that couldn't dissuade her. She had to try. No one else would. She thought maybe if he came around, if he started having a better attitude, people would be more accepting of Kyler. She didn't know why his home life was the way it was, but she could at least try to help everything else. She ran into class panting minutes before the bell. She bent over, her hands leaning on her knees as she breathed wildly. "Made it," she said, gasping for air. Noelle bent down next to her jokingly. "Someone's alarm clock break?" June groaned, standing up straight. It bothered her that she was only a few hairs taller than Noelle while she was bent over. "No, I slept right through it. I guess I was tired." Noelle stood up and put her lips to June's ear. "Can't blame you. It took forever for me to fall asleep last night." June looked down, replaying the image once again. She shook her head, trying to erase it from her mind. She walked past a boy in the front row to see a rather welcome sight. Kyler was sat in his seat, uniform perfect, not even a speck of jewelry. His hair was clean and out of his face, his bright green eyes perfectly in view. He still looked like he had a mighty attitude, but at least he was dressed correctly. June walked up to his desk and the entire class quieted to see what would transpire. This was the first public meeting of Kyler and June since the headphones incident. What would happen this time? June smiled sweetly at him. "Good morning, Kyler." The class stayed quiet. No one knew what to say, not even Noelle. Days ago they were at each other's throats, and now she was giving him common pleasantries. Kyler's eyes turned to her, his head leaning on his fist. He simply sighed and closed his eyes. June's expression tried to remain smiley, but it was obvious there was a lick of irritation. Sure would be a shame if the days kept piling up, huh?" He grunted through gritted teeth, annoyed. Kyler looked at her once again. He leaned back in his chair, his fist off his chin. He glanced around the room to see every person's eyes trained on him. There were some hushed tones and whispering, but no one was really talking. He looked at her with his usual stoic expression. "Morning." No one said a word. Kyler hadn't spoke in a public environment that wasn't a schoolyard fight in what seemed like years. Everyone stared at him as if he had tentacles popping out of his skull. He wanted to say something at them, but with June there, he could do very little that wouldn't increase the time she spent following him around. After a few moments, everyone minded their own business, and June simply acted as though nothing was strange at all. She quickly took the seat next to him and started grabbing her supplies, laying them on her desk. She put her bag over the back of the chair and took a deep sigh. "Hey," Kyler said with a hushed tone. She looked over at him. He was leaning over in her direction, his face straight, hand cupped over his mouth. He was close enough to her to hear his... He was close enough for her to hear his whispers. She didn't expect him to be so close, so she lightly gasped. "What is it?" she said hesitantly. "I had a blanket over me in the gazebo when I woke up this morning. I didn't take that with me. That was you, wasn't it?" June merely smiled and faced forward. Kyler rolled his eyes. "You were late because of me." "Not late," she corrected. "Just not early." "Well, for you, if you don't get to school before the teachers, you take it personally." "That's not true," she protested. "I have a life outside of school." "Well, when your life inside of school starts getting hurt by me, maybe you should stop the charade while you're ahead." "I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that." "I can say it again if you want." June turned to him. "My mind's made up," she said with a matter-of-fact tone. "If you want me to stop following you everywhere you go, you'd better start behaving. That way you'll make some friends, hopefully be a happier guy." He put his face on his desk. "You annoying me for a month isn't going to make me happier." Miss Higgins began her lecture, and much to June's surprise, Kyler at least seemed to be paying attention. He still leaned on his hand, but he was keeping his eyes open. Kyler was dead bored. He hated school, but he figured it was a way to get away from home. The teacher wasn't saying anything interesting, so he promptly reached into his bag to try to pull out a pair of headphones. He heard a soft and looked to his left to see June with her arms crossed, faced forward. Her ice blue eyes locked on him. She was tapping her fingers on her arms impatiently. He knew what she was saying. He displayed a creeped-out expression. How long was she watching him? She had practically been staring at him to notice. He dropped the headphones and continued paying attention. He rested his chin across his arms on his desk and sadly looked up at the board as if he had been kicked in the groin. This was going to be a long month. The sounds of kids chatting and laughing filled the outdoor lunch area. The sounds of footsteps and lunch trays being sat down on the wooden tables echoed through the chatter. The noisiest time and place in the school was upon them. Kyler simply ignored them. He sat alone in the back of the lunchroom, no tray around him. He sat alone every day, trying to waste away this time. He rarely ate, twice a week at most. He just stayed in the corner, headphones on his head, drawing or writing in his journal. He felt some sort of release from drawing. He didn't think he was much good, but the release from putting his imagination to paper was relaxing as can be. He needed that relaxation. He wrote occasionally, but he was abysmal at writing. He didn't talk much, so putting words on paper that flowed together was a challenge, considering his practice with putting them together out of his mouth was just as hard. He simply tuned everyone out and kept drawing. He had no idea what it was supposed to be, but the creation was good enough. It was some sort of two-headed dragon with a hoodie and headphones. He wanted to say it was a visual representation of himself, but the truth was, he just really liked dragons. And headphones. He felt a vibration of a light tap in front of him, and before he looked up, he felt his headphones pull from his head down to his shoulders. As he looked up, he frowned. "Seriously?" he moaned. "I can't even get peace in the lunchroom?" June shook her head with a smile. "The deal was simple. I follow you around to be your friend. Be nice, and I go away sooner. At this rate, I'll be here forever." "Don't say that," he sighed, putting his head down. "I have nightmares as is." He heard more taps to the left and the right of June. He looked up to see Ben on her right and our friend Noelle on her left. "What?" he said with a monotone, irritated voice. "Is this piss-off Kyler Day?" Noelle smiled at him awkwardly. Friends of June are friends of mine. Oh, what a coincidence. Then we aren't friends. Kyler turned to Ben. And you haven't sit with me in years. What gives? Ben laughed nervously. Well, I saw you getting so popular, so I wanted to see what was up. Kyler looked at Noelle, then June, then Ben. While June's smile seemed genuine, the others were smiling nervously at him, almost sweating. He stared at Ben for a few moments before lowering his eyelids slightly, calmly opened his mouth. You told them, didn't you? No one moved. The room's tension felt thicker suddenly. June and Noelle felt like they were caught dead in their tracks, like Kyler had a sniper trained on their heads, and he wasn't even looking at them. They could only fear what Ben felt like as Kyler's eyes were glued to him. They slowly turned to their left to see Ben sweating bullets. Was this the gaze of Kyler they'd heard so much about? They looked at Kyler to see a very calm, blank expression. There was no irritation. I didn't tell them, Ben mumbled softly. Kyler shot out of his seat and grabbed Ben's shirt collar. He smiled sinisterly at him. This was the first time June had ever seen him smile, and it wasn't the least bit cute. His eyes seemed to have fire in them. I know when you're lying, Ben, he said with a demonic growl. And you know what I do to people who lie to me. Wait, June objected. Look, okay, yeah, he showed us what your home was like, but he warned us a lot. We pushed him. It's our fault. Our fault? Noelle echoed. Hold on just a... June turned to her with an expression that screamed, shut up. Kyler turned to her, his eyes still showing rage. It wasn't his business to show you. It wasn't your business to see it. I should absolutely wreck him. Hey, you know what's cool? Ben asked, nervously laughing. Forgiveness. That's really cool. Kyler released his collar. Ben, that was private. No matter how you look at it, you crossed a serious line. He sat back in his seat and continued doodling. Ben looked down, ashamed. June looked from Ben to Kyler. Blame me, she offered. It was my idea, the whole thing. I cut your headphones, you returned my folder when it was almost an hour and a half away from your house. You didn't have to do that, so I wanted to give you a new pair, but you weren't at school. And I asked Ben to show me where you lived. I'm sorry. Blame me, all right? Whatever, Kyler said with a sigh. Nothing I can do to change it. You all know, but if you're going to know all this, not one of you is allowed to do a damn thing about it. Noelle shifted uncomfortably. I'm sorry, too, she echoed. If it's any consolation, you're really cool for sticking up for her like that. I wouldn't be strong enough to do that. Kyler dropped his pencil and wore an exhausted face. You get used to it, he said with a sniff. June looked down. You shouldn't have to. Well, Kyler said with a shrug, picking up his pencil. It was a hand I was dealt. Gotta play it, right? He continued drawing peacefully, leaning on his cheek in his left hand. What for drawing? June said with food in her mouth. Noelle snorted. Kyler looked up and cracked a brief smile. Gotcha, June thought. What? June swallowed dramatically and sprawled across the table, looking at his paper. What you drawing? Kyler leaned back defensively, but kept drawing. Nothing. June grumbled suspiciously. Awful lot of pencil markings to be drawing a nothing. Shouldn't the paper be blank? I'm drawing a very visible nothing. Your nothing's not very good at his job. Let me see it. Kyler looked down at her to see picking at it. He pursed his lips and turned it around, letting June look at it. June picked it up and leaned back. Whoa, she gasped. You're really good. I didn't know you could draw so well. Kyler looked uncomfortable. It's not a big deal. It's just a drawing. Well, yeah, June agreed, but it's a good one. I can't draw this good. It's really not that good. June looked up, irritated. Come on, I'm complimenting you. Can't you take it? Kyler looked away. Thanks. June sighed. Man, you gotta work on those social skills. Not a big fan of talking to people, huh? Do you talk to dogs instead? Why do you say that like it's a bad thing? I like dogs. Who doesn't like dogs? Want mine? Noelle muttered under her breath. June handed him back the drawing. Just saying. Don't worry, we'll work on that. Ben smiled. Remember when we used to pass those doodles of our teachers and kept building on them to make them look more cartoony and ridiculous? Kyler looked down to hide his smirk. Yeah, I remember. Good old Mrs. Frode. Which is fitting because she looked like a frog or a toad, depending on the day. June couldn't help but smile at him. He looked like he was at least enjoying the company. That's all he needed, she hoped. Hey, Juniper! A voice called from behind her. She turned around to see a few girls from different classes behind her. They all looked friendly enough. Hi, she responded brightly. What's up? Well, we were wondering if you could help us out with something. We're with the school newspaper, and we were just going to ask if you were planning on running for class president again. June grinned devilishly, glancing at Ben. Of course. Great! Sometime later, can we interview you? June shrugged. You can do it now. It's all right. The two on the sides looked away while the girl in the middle looked concerned at her. She said hesitantly, glancing over at Kyler as if looking at a monster. That's okay. Later's fine. See ya. What? Why? The girls were already walking away. June watched them as they didn't even look back. She faced forward and glanced at Noelle. What did I say? Kyler blew a slight burst of air from his nose. Nothing you said. Can't believe you haven't noticed yet. June looked at him, puzzled. Notice what? People are afraid of me, he said, still doodling. They don't like me too much. Also, they're kind of confused. People like you don't hang out with people like me. And people that like to hang out with people like you would never want to hang out with people like me. It's the high school attitude. Everyone's got a clique, and if you're not wearing the same clothes the same way, walking the same way, and laughing at the same jokes and trashing on the same people, you won't fit in. June blinked. I'm not that popular, though. Are you kidding? Kyler said, looking up. You and Ben are probably the most beloved people in the school. You're social butterflies. People like butterflies. You know what they don't like? That's not fair, Kyler. I didn't ask for a bunch of people to like me. Oh, God, poor you, he remarked sarcastically. Must be a real burden to have a bunch of people saying hi to you in the hall and willing to stick up for you if some jerk like me steps on your toes. Guess what? I don't care about being popular. I just like being nice to people. I think people like it when you're nice to them, believe it or not. I know, such a concept. It's why I'm helping you out, to get you there. In case your memory needs a jog, I didn't ask for your help. Not once. You should have just let it go. You messed with me. I helped you. Guess what? I kind of messed with you a lot too. Don't you keep your hair short because of me? Your hair used to be really curly before you kept it short like that. What else have I done to you? It's in the past, she said calmly. I'm willing to forget our past. Why aren't you? The past isn't the issue. It's the fact that I'll drag you down if you keep trying to fix me. We hate each other. That's what everyone's used to. I don't hate you. Well, you used to. June was becoming frustrated. You're right. I did. Because I was angry that I didn't understand you. But I do now. Oh, you do! If you knew me, you'd know that I don't want friends that are just here to pity me. June was caught off guard by that comment. But, she muttered softly, I wasn't doing this because of that. I want to help you. No. You want to help your happy-go-lucky, merry-go-round, sunshines and rainbows perfect world come to life where everyone holds hands and dances until sundown. The world isn't like that. I know that! She shouted. People were beginning to look over. Tears began to form in her eyes. She rose to her feet. I thought that maybe I could be your friend. That you wouldn't have to be alone. That we could understand each other. I just wanted to get along. She looked up, her face red, her eyes wet. Kyler looked at her surprised. He didn't imagine he'd make her cry. I'm sorry that's not enough for you. She picked up her tray and walked away in a hurry. Kyler watched her walk away, frustrated. He looked down and kept drawing, much angrier this time. I don't want her help. I don't want her around.
Yeah, you do.
Kyler looked back up to see Noelle looking at him, shaking her head. No, I don't.
Yeah, you do,
she repeated.
Who are you trying to fool? Us or you?
What are you talking about?
If you really didn't care, if you really didn't want her around, why tell us? Why say anything at all? Why not just keep it inside? The fact you said it out loud shows you're trying to convince us that you don't want her. But here's the facts. June is the only person in years to reach out to you, and since you don't know how to react, you'd sooner kick her out of your life than lose her on your own. Or am I wrong?
Kyler couldn't respond. He was too busy staring at Noelle as if she pulled his pants down. His face was red. His neck was hot. He was getting called out harshly. He heard a loud tap on the table in front of him. He looked down to see a tray of food right under his nose, with an arm attached to it. He followed the arm to see June staring down at him, her face still slightly red.
Eat,
she said forcefully.
I don't want you going hungry.
June quickly walked away again, obviously not planning on returning. Kyler didn't know what to feel. The attention was new to him. He didn't think it was real. He stared at the food for a while, trying to come up with the answer. Why did she care so much? He wanted to know, but he also wished he didn't care that much. He didn't want to care. He just wanted to push everyone out. For years, he'd pushed everyone away from him. Why was this girl so different? Why did she care so much? Noelle looked at Kyler as he picked up a fork, sticking it through a pear. He stared at it shyly before softly taking a bite. It was the first weekend of the school year, and June was already worn down. The last week was one of the most intense and busy she'd ever had, the last 48 hours especially. She took a moment as she walked to think about the dramatic turn of events that led to what she considered her most important goal right now. It was crazy. A week ago, that day, she didn't even think about Kyler, and if she did, she shivered in disgust. Then she learned why he was the way that he was. She couldn't help it. She had to do something. It was hot out in the low 90s. She couldn't wear her school uniform out, so she just wore casual clothes. Her light blonde hair was messy, as she didn't bother fixing it, and she didn't have any makeup on. She was utterly exhausted. She couldn't bear putting effort into her look that day. She'd been walking for over an hour. She knew her destination would be getting close. June had a few errands to run, and this had to be the first one. She saw the building she headed towards and approached the front door. Then she knocked. Moments later, a familiar girl opened the door. She threw her confused yet semi-friendly look.
Hi, she said brightly. Can I help you?
June threw her a tired smile.
Is Kyler home?
Kaylee's smile faded to simple confusion.
Why? What did he do?
June blinked before shaking her head.
Nothing. I was just wondering if you wanted to go with me on some errands today.
Kaylee looked around.
Is this some kind of joke? Did you just move here? Do you have any other friends? In that order? No, and yes.
None of them were available, huh? June sighed.
They were. I just wanted to see Kyler. Is he home?
Kaylee displayed a concerned expression, yet turned around.
Kyler! Get down here, idiot! You have company!
June's blood boiled. It used to make her sad the way he was treated, but she knew there was good in him. It just made her angry now. A few moments passed before a response.
Who is it? He called. Well, maybe you should get down here and check, unless you forgot you have eyes.
I'm not dressed, dude. Can you tell me who it is? Kaylee sighed, obviously annoyed.
What's your name?
She asked in a hurry.
June? June's here.
Close the door right now, he screamed. Kaylee turned to her and motioned her inside.
You must really get on his nerves.
June laughed nervously. She wanted at least to appear polite.
You could say that. It's fine. I can wait out here. I enjoy the heat.
Kaylee shrugged and left the door open, walking away. Kyler walked down the stairs moments later. His green eyes showed irritation as he began tying his hair behind his head in a messy bun. What are you doing here? He asked in a sharp whisper.
I came to get you,
she spoke normally. Her expression turned into a cringe.
A man bun? You can't be serious. You don't think that's cute, do you?
Kyler finished tying his hair up. Breaking news. Local boy doesn't care. What do you want me for?
I need to do a few things today.
She leaned in a bit closer and dropped her voice to a whisper.
I figured you might like an excuse to get out of the house today.
Kyler looked at her for a moment, as if considering that she had a great point. Lead the way. June's brows furrowed.
You're not going to tell them you're leaving?
Please, he said with a scoff. As if they'd care. If I told them that, I'd find remnants of a cake and streamers in the trash by the time I got back. He closed the door behind them and started walking next to June, his hands in his pockets. June turned to him, needing to move her legs faster than him to keep up.
Don't you ever get tired of the way you get treated? I mean, you've tried talking to him about it, right?
Have you ever tried talking to a brick wall and gotten a response? That'd be like telling a zebra not to have stripes. It's a futile effort, believe me.
Why do you put up with it? She inquired. I mean, I see you get into fights all the time at school. You literally stand up to anyone. Why not them?
Kyler didn't answer right away. It was as if he was thinking about it, as if he'd never considered it before. I'm not a very smart guy, he admitted. I know that's probably because I don't pay attention in school, but whatever the case, most of the problems I have are with people who want to pick a fight. I fight them. That's how I solve my issues. I can't fight my sister. I can't fight my dad. It's kind of a catch-22 anyway. If I want them to stop fighting me, I fight them, hurt them, and then become even a bigger nuisance than I was before. It's really a lose-lose for me. June faced forward.
32 days.
Kyler looked at her in shock.
What? I didn't do anything! Insulting yourself is not allowed. You're smart. Maybe not book smart, but you are. You're also lucky I'm not counting the lunch incident yesterday.
Kyler shifted. But I didn't know that was a rule. You can't just make stuff up as you go. June gave him another pouty look.
Fine, she said childishly. 31. But no more, or else it's another day.
Kyler blew a raspberry. You're a confusing person. June's expression changed to a curious one.
Why do you say that?
No one else in that school, or maybe even the world, would reach out to me like you are. No one would waste their time. You could be hanging out with your real friends, you could be tutoring people, you could be running track, you could literally be doing anything. Yet here you are, walking with somebody who you considered an enemy a week ago. No one would do that. Why do you? And give me the real answer. I think you owe me that much. June stopped walking and looked at him. He stopped walking, turning to face her. Her expression didn't change.
Because I know what it's like to have a father like that.
Kyler's gaze hardened.
My father abused my mother for years. He never hit me or my little brother Jeff, but made my life's mom hell. He was a drunk. Probably still is. I haven't seen him in a long time. I never once, since he left, considered myself that I loved him. I can't. For what he did to my mom, I'll never be able to accept him as Dad. He's just another guy. When I looked inside your house, she continued, I couldn't help but get flashbacks to my father. I don't mean to compare, really. I don't want you to think that I feel your pain. I don't. A part of me wishes I did, so I knew better how to help, but I don't. But when I saw your suffering, I felt guilty. I felt thankful that I never went through that, and for that, I felt guilty. I couldn't just sit back and watch another kid have their life ruined by their father. I would have offered a hand to Kaylee too, but...
It's all right, Kyler said, a hand held forward, signaling a stop. I get it now. I understand a little bit. You saw yourself in there, right? June looked down, nodding sadly.
Mm-hmm.
Kyler removed the band from his hair, his locks falling into place. He slicked his hair back, a few bangs still on the outer edges of his face. He placed the rubber band over his thumb, pulled back and slung it at June. It hit her in the head. She glanced at the band, then looked at him. If you're sad, how the hell are you going to help me? So no being sad around me. That's a rule. June was taken aback. She showed a surprised expression, but smiled.
Fine. I'll follow that rule.
Kyler didn't smile back, but he shrugged, motioning her in front of him. So where are we going anyway? June looked at him with gritted teeth.
I need to do some grocery shopping.
Kyler sighed. And why am I going with you exactly?
June grinned. To show you my side of town, the sights, it'll be fun.
You're just taking me with you to reach things on high shelves, aren't you?
Nonsense.
The sound of elevator-esque music and carts rolling around the tile breezed through the aisle. They were already in the grocery store. The cart was already half full. June looked down at her list.
All right, so grab the salsa 2, and then... She paused. Actually, grab 2. My little brother loves salsa.
Kyler sighed, grabbing 2 glass jars. I get grabbing things for you and everything. He set the jars in the cart and grabbed the bar. But how the hell did I get stuck pushing the cart? You're not doing anything.
I'm telling you what I need, aren't I?
You're a slave driver.
I'm a leader.
Being in front of somebody does not equal leading them.
Would you quit complaining? She groaned, putting her list down. We're almost done. Just gotta get dairy and then we're out of here. Promise.
Kyler eyed her suspiciously. Fine, he said finally. But I just have one question.
What's that?
Kyler looked down. How do you plan on getting this stuff home? It's enough to fill half a trunk.
I've thought of that, actually.
Yeah?
We carry it in one trip.
Kyler released the bar to the cart. Bye.
I live around the corner.
Kyler continued to push the cart. This better be the last thing you make me do today.
You could use the workout.
Are you calling me fat? Isn't that like at least 3 days off my time just for that? June picked up her list again, but something caught the corner of her eye. She looked up to see Ben waving and approaching them. I thought that sounded like you two arguing. June nudged Kyler.
Hear that? We have our own sound. We're practically famous.
I'd rather be famous for something else.
Like what?
I don't know. Best looking guy in the world?
June grinned at him. Might want to keep practicing.
Kyler stared a hole through her soul as she covered her mouth, chuckling mischievously. Ben looked confused, mostly because he'd never seen June so loose before. Anyway, Kyler said, looking at Ben. What's up, just shopping? Ben nodded, pointing to the aisle to his left. I'm over here. My mom is out of town for the weekend, so I'm shopping for myself. What are you guys shopping together? Her idea, Kyler chimed. She just brought me along to do the work.
How chivalrous of you to wish such work upon a lady such as me.
Stop talking like that.
Nay.
Ben giggled. I guess I'll see you at school. Be sure to be a good boy, Kyler. Wouldn't want to garner more days. Ben walked back to his aisle as Kyler squinted at June, pushing the cart. You told him?
Yeah,
she said with a smile.
Him and Noelle both know. I figure if you're being a jerk when I'm not around, that should count. Consider them extra surveillance.
I feel like you're just on one big power trip.
That's not nice. I thought we were friends.
Kyler moaned half-heartedly. She and Kyler quickly checked out and shoved everything into bags to help the cashier. They picked them all up and walked out. June was struggling a bit. Her strength was in her legs, not her arms, but Kyler, carrying over half the weight, didn't seem too bothered. She was just glad everything was double-sacked. After a short walk to her house, she opened the door and promptly got sprayed with liquid. She gasped, her shirt wet, her eyes closed, and her expression sour.
Jeff! She shouted, irritated. Not cool!
A younger boy with short blonde hair showed a toothy grin.
I heard you coming,
he said, barely able to contain a laugh.
I had to be ready.
June groaned.
Twerp, you know I just washed my clothes. It's just water, June.
June slowly set the bags down and took a deep breath and leaped at him.
Come here,
she shouted, laughing. She tackled him and rolled around on the floor. She held his arms down and looked down at him.
Apologize right now.
She made an over-exaggerated, serious face.
You gonna drop a loogie if I don't?
Jeff challenged. June's face turned sour.
That's gross,
she squealed. She let him up and pointed a gun at her.
All right, you sprayed me once. That's enough. Go get Mom. Tell her I got food.
Jeff obliged and walked off into a room down the hall inside their second-floor apartment. She looked back to Kyler and motioned him in.
You can come in. Set the stuff down on the kitchen floor.
Kyler looked uncomfortable in a new house, but dropped the stuff and shoved his hands into his pockets. So, is that it? I'm headed home, right? Before June could speak, a woman walked out of the room in a bathrobe and messed up hair. She almost talked to June, but looked at Kyler and jumped.
Oh!
she exclaimed.
I didn't know June brought a friend home.
She looked over at June semi-sternly.
Would have been nice to have a warning.
She looked at Kyler and smiled, holding her hand out.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Julie.
Hi, Kyler said hesitantly, shaking her hand. I'm Kyler. I was just leaving, actually. I hope I wasn't intruding.
What?
Julie said with a half-hurt look.
You weren't at all, sweetie. Why don't you stay for dinner?
Kyler started to say no, but looked over at June, who mouthed the words 32. Kyler looked irritated at her, but shrugged at Julie. Well, as long as you don't mind.
Of course not, she said, walking away. Kyler, right? I've never heard June mention you. How do you know her?
Jeff sneered at June.
Probably her boyfriend.
June flicked him behind the ear. Kyler was obviously flustered by the comment, but held himself together and forced an awkward smile. I just returned a folder to her once.
Oh,
Julie said with a sly smile.
So you're the one who called her the seed of Satan.
When Kyler sat down for dinner, he was under the impression that Julie would be the one cooking, not June, but there she was. She was in the kitchen, still wearing her outfit, but had a polka dot apron on. Kyler thought it was cheesy, but June wouldn't take it off. Besides, if he told her how he thought she looked, she might add an entire week. June set a plate of food down in front of everyone, as well as the spot she'd sit in. She sat next to Kyler, taking her apron off. He looked down at his plate. It consisted of a roast, mashed potatoes, and green beans. He poked his roast with his fork. June looked at him.
What?
She said, mouthful of mashed potatoes. I think I saw it move.
No, you didn't. That's not funny.
No, seriously. He picked up a piece of mashed potato with his finger, holding it near her. June eyed it closely.
Nope, don't see it.
Kyler wiped it on her face quickly.
What the? Hey!
Guess I imagined it after all. June wiped her face, sticking her tongue out at Kyler. She then cupped her hands together and bowed her head. Kyler eyed her strangely, then noticed all three of them bowed their heads, their hands folded. He didn't want to be rude, so he did the same.
Thank you, Lord, Julie said gently, for this wonderful meal. Thank you for the clothes on our backs. Thank you for this opportunity to come home to a lovely home and family every single day. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen,
June and Jeff said. Kyler said it shortly after, trying to remain courteous. He didn't consider himself religious, but he would be damned if he was going to be rude.
So,
Julie said, cutting her piece of roast up.
What activities are you into, Kyler?
Kyler took a drink of water, then set his glass down on the table. I used to play baseball, he said. That was years ago, though. June was surprised. She didn't take Kyler for an athlete. Sure, he looked in shape, but she didn't think he was very serious about it. Julie smiled.
Ah,
she said, chewing her food. So, she paused to swallow.
Anything you into right now?
Kyler shook his head. Just school, I guess. What do you do for a living? Julie glanced over at June, smiling. Manners, nice. She looked over at Kyler.
I work at a makeup store. I'm an assistant manager there.
Kyler nodded, chewing his food.
So, where did you meet June?
School, he said after swallowing. She used to bully me a lot in class. Julie looked over at June, who was staring at Kyler blankly, fork in front of her face if she froze before she bit her food.
Really?
She asked.
Do you consider asking you to do schoolwork bullying?
Yes.
Never mind, June said, biting her food. I hate you again.
Kyler turned to Julie. I'm not the easiest guy to be around at school. I don't really like to, move. So I caused a lot of trouble for Juniper, if I'm being honest. June looked at Kyler curiously. That was the closest thing to a compliment from him she'd ever gotten. She's told me stories, Julie said, sipping her glass of water. She mentioned a boy used to pull her hair. Another boy even pulled her skirt down in the hallway. Kyler showed a painful expression. Both of those were me, actually. Jeff snorted, his face almost hitting his food. Julie blinked at him, then turned to June.
You sure know how to pick your friends.
June shrugged.
It's in the past. He's a different guy. Sorta. Maybe sometime soon. If we're lucky.
June shook her head, pursed.
I'm not going to tell you who to date, June.
June almost spit out her food. "Oh, come on, Mom," she mumbled, her mouth full of food. Kyler looked away. They both hated people assuming they were dated. If they were forced to go on a date, somebody would be strangled and left on the highway in the middle of the night. "Well," Julie said, finishing her last bite, "as long as you're not too mean to her. Be sure to nip at her now and then, though." "Oh, yeah, thanks, Mom." Kyler gave her a thumbs up. "It's my pleasure to be the biggest pain in the ass I can be without potentially being mentally scarring." Julie grinned. "But just remember, June's a delicate little flower. You wouldn't believe how sensitive she used to be when she was about 5, 6. Oh, you want to see a few pictures?" Kyler nodded instantly. "Yes, absolutely. Nothing would make me happier than that." June leaned on her fist, looking at him with a psychotic smile. Her eyes widened and her mouth exaggerated smiley. 35 days. Kyler leaned in closely and threw her completely off with a sly smile, the first smile that didn't look scary or awkward. "Worth it," he whispered. "Hey, Mom," Jeff spoke up. "You should show Kyler where June's birthmark is." "No!" June shouted. "Mom, please don't." Jeff turned to Kyler, smiling. "It's on her." "No!" she screamed. She rose to her feet and ran across the table, tackling Jeff. She rolled around the floor with him, both of them yelling and laughing. June tickled him and Jeff began cackling, his face turning red. "Stop!" he protested. "Stop, please!" "No way," she said with a fake evil laugh. "You're totally dead now." She was turned around by Jeff squirming and caught a glimpse of Kyler's face. It wasn't simply stoic like his normal expression. His eyes were soft. His brows were curled down. He looked sad even. She thought he was looking at her, but he was looking at Jeff. She didn't understand at first, but after thinking about it for a few moments, she figured that he longed for that kind of relationship with his older sister. June felt bad playing with Jeff like that in front of him, so she hopped off. "It's getting kind of late," June said, quickly looking at her watch. "What time should you be home?" Kyler snapped out of his daze, looking like a deer in headlights. "Huh? Oh, I guess any time. I could probably start heading home now." June turned to her mom. "Can I walk him?" Julie waved her off, beginning to clean up the dishes used. Kyler stood up, put on his shoes, and opened the door. June jogged over, put on a pair of flats, and walked in front. "Interesting home life you have there," Kyler said, walking down the stairs after June. June snickered. "Yeah, my mom's the coolest mom there is." Kyler nodded. "Seems that way. It's okay, I can walk myself, I know the way." "I know," June said, swinging her arms in front of her. "But I'm bored." "You can walk me to the school, then head back." "All right, fair enough." They walked in silence for a while, not sure what to say. June would occasionally look at Kyler, wondering what was on his mind. He looked so blank, his face straight, hands in his pockets. He glanced over at her, then looked creeped out. "Stop staring at me. I'm human, if you're wondering." "Ah," she said sarcastically. "Had me fooled for a second there." Kyler rolled his eyes and looked forward. "Hey, so, Kyler glanced at June, who was trying to find the words. "Sorry about what happened with Jeff and I. Didn't mean to show off like that." Kyler snorted as if he didn't know what she was talking about. "He's your little brother. Why be sorry?" June shrugged. She started to remember the way Kaylee treated him, and felt saddened. She remembered the things she said. One thing had been sticking with her, and she just had to ask. "I know this is really personal," she started, "and if you don't answer, it's okay." Kyler's lips curled and shrugged. "I'm okay. What is it?" "Your sister said something weird," she started hesitantly. "When we were watching the argument, she said you..." She hesitated, thinking twice. She gulped. "Killed your mom." Kyler looked away, grimly, his eyes looking at his shoes, his hair hanging in front of his face. His green eyes suddenly looked so lifeless. It was obviously a sore topic. "I was just wondering..." She trailed off, unable to find the words. She was choking on something. She didn't know if her throat was sore from the inevitable tears.
I was just wondering, what was her name?
She decided she couldn't go through with the question. He knew what she wanted to ask, but she couldn't go through with it. Kyler looked over at her, slightly surprised that she didn't go through with it, but still looked saddened. Marcy. June nodded, looking forward.
Pretty name.
They continued walking in silence until they reached the school. Kyler walked forward and then looked back at June. Looks like this is your stop. See ya.
You're positive you don't want me to come?
Kyler looked around. Nah, he answered. I like my alone time. June puffed her cheeks.
That's cool. I'll just see you Monday.
She turned to leave. Hey, Juniper, Kyler said softly. June turned around, slightly startled by the gentle inflection of his voice. She blinked at him, her eyes brightened by the streetlight.
Yeah?
Kyler covered his mouth, obviously grinning. Your birthmark is on your butt, isn't it? June turned to leave immediately without another word.